In the year 2014, human activities destroyed the Earth's atmosphere, resulting in severe global warming. To address this crisis, scientists develop an artificial cooling substance which they disperse into the air. While it effectively reduces the heat, it also triggers a new ice age on the planet. Fortunately, a genius scientist named Wilfred constructs a train named Snowpiercer powered by a perpetual engine that continuously circles the globe. The remaining humans on the planet now inhabit the train, as venturing outside means certain death from freezing temperatures. By 2031, the passengers on the train have become segregated by class. The train cars are structured accordingly. The upper classes occupy the front, the economy classes are situated towards the rear, and the poorest individuals are confined to the tail section. 17 years later, the guards distribute meager rations of unappetizing protein blocks to the impoverished residents of the tail section. All must sit to receive their portion, but a young man named Curtis refuses until he is threatened by a guard. Curtis confides in his friend Edgar, revealing that he has meticulously counted the doors as part of a plan to sneak through the train.
Stop it!
The guard inquires if any of the group are experienced violinists, prompting an elderly couple to step forward, citing their past membership in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Attempting to take only Gerald, the guard encounters resistance as Gerald refuses to leave his wife behind. In response, the guard violently assaults the woman, breaking her hand before forcibly dragging Gerald away. Later, Curtis visits Tanya and her son Timmy, negotiating a trade of protein blocks with the boy. Curtis cuts up his new protein block and discovers a small capsule containing a message within it. He brings it to Gilliam, an elderly one-armed man seated beside a Wilfred logo on the wall. The message bears the name Nam, identifying a security expert from the prison section. Curtis seeks Nam's assistance in orchestrating the revolution, prompting Gilliam to aid Curtis in strategizing their next steps. Later, while the passengers are asleep, a group of guards led by Wilfred's assistant, Claude, arrive and begin measuring all the children with the tape. Suddenly, Claude discovers Timmy hiding under Tanya's skirt. In a panic, Timmy attempts to flee as his mother screams, but the guards apprehend him and viciously assault Tanya to silence her cries. After completing the measurements, Claude selects Timmy and Andy, Andrew's son. Devastated, Andrew protests and throws a shoe at Claude, prompting the guards to swiftly apprehend him as well. Moments later, young Franco and old Franco restrain Andrew, fastening a clock around his neck before forcing his arm through a hole in the wall, causing him to scream in agony from the sub-zero temperatures. Minister Mason arrives and delivers a lengthy speech, chastising the passengers for their unruly behavior. She places the shoe thrown by Andrew atop his head, emphasizing the necessity for adherence to the train's strict order. Mason then attempts to contact Wilfred via phone to prompt him to address the passengers, but receives no response. The Francos forcibly remove Andrew's frozen arm and proceed to shatter it with a large hammer to complete his punishment. In the aftermath, the impoverished passengers intensify their efforts to assemble a tool that will aid in their revolution. Meanwhile, Curtis acquires cranol, small blocks of industrial waste often used by addicts for a high, noting their highly flammable nature. He becomes fixated on Minister Mason's description of the guards' weapons as useless guns, speculating that they may have depleted their ammunition during the previous revolt. As everyone diligently works, the group's artist meticulously captures the significant moments, presenting Andrew and Tanya with portraits of their children. Suddenly, the alarm blares, sending everyone into a frenzy as they line up for the guards. Seizing the opportunity, they initiate a distraction by loudly protesting the quality of the protein blocks. In response, a guard seizes an elderly man and threatens him at gunpoint. Reacting swiftly, Curtis rushes forward, placing the gun against his own head. When the guard attempts to fire, nothing happens, prompting Edgar to shout that the guns are empty. Chaos erupts as this realization spreads among the passengers. The device is revealed to be a massive train of pipes mounted on wheels, which the group begins to push through the successive compartments, with Curtis perched atop it. A fierce battle erupts between the guards and the rebels, but lacking ammunition, the rebels gain the upper hand and overpower their adversaries. Amidst the chaos, a formidable guard attempts to impede their progress, but Gray swiftly subdues him, dispatching the guard and seizing his keys. With the way cleared, the rebels advance unimpeded to the prison car, where cells are actually compartments embedded in the walls. Using the acquired keys, the rebels succeed in releasing the security expert Nam, who appears disoriented due to his addiction. Curtis, after retrieving a translating device from the wall, outlines his plan to enlist Nam's help in navigating through the subsequent train cars, offering Chronol as payment. Deep in contemplation, Nam lights a cigarette, startling everyone as cigarettes have been scarce for over a decade. Seizing the opportunity, the resourceful Chan steals Nam's matches. Tensions escalate as the cigarette becomes a coveted item, sparking a brawl among the passengers. Despite initially joining the fray, Nam is eventually pulled away by Curtis. Nam discloses that he possesses the keys and proceeds to unlock another compartment, revealing his daughter Yona, who is also battling addiction. Nam conditions his assistants on receiving Chronol for each door they traverse, a condition Curtis agrees to. With determination, Nam begins manipulating the wires of the door mechanism. Upon Yona's assurance that no one awaits on the other side, Nam successfully opens the door, revealing an empty space beyond. As someone opens the windows, the passengers are stunned to behold sunlight once more after nearly 2 decades of darkness. The outside world is shrouded in snow, with every city frozen solid. Reflecting on his own origins outside the train, Curtis begins to wonder if Yona possesses clairvoyant abilities, especially when she suddenly shouts a warning not to open the door. However, their caution comes too late as the door swings open, revealing a room filled with masked men brandishing axes. As a menacing gesture, they hold up a fish and proceed to gut it. Unfazed by the masked men's display, the rebels charge forward, igniting a chaotic brawl. The skirmish quickly escalates into a brutal fight, with both sides sustaining heavy casualties and blood painting the walls of the car. Amidst the chaos, Edgar and Curtis press on, cutting down numerous assailants. However, their momentum is abruptly halted when Curtis slips on the fish, leaving him vulnerable to attack. In a split-second rescue, Edgar intervenes, dispatching Curtis' would-be assailant. As they near the front of the car, they encounter even more masked adversaries and a contingent of guards. The guards announce their impending passage over a bridge, initiating a countdown. As the train approaches the bridge, the masked men jubilantly exclaim, "Happy New Year!" Unfortunately, since the previous year, several banks of ice have accumulated on the bridge. As the train traverses these icy obstacles, it violently shakes, causing most passengers to tumble to the ground, with the exception of Yona and Nam, who peer out the window to assess the cliffs below. Eventually, a guard announces their successful crossing of the bridge, prompting everyone to rise and prepare for further conflict. However, their resolve is interrupted by the arrival of Mason and the Francos. Mason admonishes the rebels for their ingratitude towards Wilfred's provision of shelter and sustenance over the years, before delivering the grim news that 74% of them will face execution. As Curtis seizes Mason, she commands an end to the fighting. Young Franco attempts to retaliate against Curtis, only to be thwarted by Yona, who emerges from hiding to impale him with a metal rod. After capturing old Franco, the group proceeds to wash away the blood in the adjacent car, where they discover running water. Tanya and Andrew resort to violence in an attempt to extract information from Mason, but she reveals only that the children are taken to Wilfred. Curtis then resorts to threats, suggesting he can cut off the water supply. However, Mason dismisses his threat, explaining that the water is sourced from the front of the train, derived from the snow and ice the train breaks as it moves. Despite Curtis' readiness to end Mason's life, she persuades him to spare her by offering to ensure their safe passage. That night, the group decides to take a rest, but Curtis and Gilliam remain awake, strategizing their next steps. Gilliam expresses concern over the significant loss of life, prompting Curtis to propose continuing alone, while Gilliam stays behind to watch over the group and the captives. Upon observing Curtis' arm scar, Gilliam reluctantly agrees to the plan. The following morning, Curtis sets out with Andrew, Tanya, Nam, Gray, and Yona, ensuring Mason remains restrained at the front. Their journey begins in a greenhouse car, where fruits and vegetables are cultivated for the upper-class passengers. Nam offers Yona some soil, which surprises her as she had never touched it before. Yona's curiosity is piqued as she examines the soil and discovers the presence of worms within. In the next car, they enter a giant aquarium where Mason suggests enjoying sushi. However, Curtis intervenes, reminding them that fish consumption is restricted on the train to maintain ecological balance, with fish being eaten only twice a year. Despite Mason's attempt to partake, Curtis insists she eat a protein block instead, relishing the discomfort evident on her face as she is aware of its contents. Continuing their journey, they pass through the butcher car before arriving at a classroom filled with screaming children. Tanya and Andrew promptly inquire about their missing children using the drawings, but one boy can only inform them that the children were taken further into the train. The teacher activates a video filled with propaganda, indoctrinating the children to believe that Wilfred is their benevolent savior. Enthralled, the children cheer for their leader. Following this, the teacher performs a song, accompanied by an instrument, warning the children of the dire consequences if the train were ever to stop, emphasizing the imminent threat of freezing to death. Coinciding with this grim lesson, the train passes a desolate landscape where frozen statues of 7 individuals, who attempted to escape 15 years prior, serve as a haunting reminder of the dangers beyond the train. Amidst this somber atmosphere, a man arrives with a cart brimming with warm eggs for New Year's. Both the children and the rebels eagerly grab eggs to eat. Pressing forward, they encounter several cars occupied by the upper-class passengers, who enjoy various luxuries and services including medical care, tailoring, and a beauty salon. As they traverse the dining room, Franco becomes aware of the train's maneuver, aligning his car with the one carrying the rebels. Franco swiftly opens fire, prompting Curtis to retaliate. However, despite their efforts, both parties miss their shots until their ammunition is depleted. While they reload, Nam notices the snowflake entering through the bullet holes, prompting him to perceive it as a clue. Franco and Curtis resume shooting, but realizing the futility of their confrontation, they agree to cease fire and move forward. The group moves through a spa area before reaching a sauna where they conceal themselves in the stalls. Franco and 2 guards catch up to them, and Franco violently dispatches a high-class passenger upon opening the stall. When one of the guards objects, Franco eliminates him as well. Seizing the opportunity, Greg emerges to eliminate the remaining guard and wound Franco with a stab to the shoulder, sparking a fierce confrontation. As the struggle intensifies, Curtis emerges to retaliate against Franco, but hesitates to shoot for fear of hitting Gray. However, when Franco incapacitates Gray, Curtis finally opens fire. In the ensuing exchange, Franco manages to wound Curtis in the arm. Tanya attempts to intervene, but Franco swiftly silences her with gunfire. Undeterred, Franco discovers Nam hiding behind a woman in another stall, igniting yet another confrontation. As Nam gains the upper hand, beginning to strangle Franco, Yona emerges and seizes the knife, poised to deliver a fatal blow. Despite Yona's resolve, Nam intervenes, compelling her to relinquish the weapon. In a moment of reawakening, Curtis seizes the opportunity, grabbing the discarded knife and swiftly plunging it into Franco's side, ultimately bringing an end to the violent struggle. Afterward, Curtis rushes to check on Tanya, who requests to see Timmy's drawing one last time before succumbing to her injuries. Despite the loss, the group presses on, traversing through a car hosting a raucous party filled with alcohol and decadence, followed by another car housing pits filled with addicts. Seizing the opportunity, Nam and Yona pilfer some furs and alcohol. Continuing their journey, they pass through a computer car before crossing a bridge, finally arriving at Wilfred's vault door. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Yona collapses due to excessive alcohol consumption. As Curtis urges Nam to open the door, Nam requests more cranol. Curtis, driven to the brink, begins to pound on the door in frustration. In an attempt to calm him, Nam engages in a physical altercation with Curtis before ultimately offering him the last cigarette on Earth. As Curtis savors the cigarette, he shares his story with Nam, finding a moment of solace amidst the chaos. During the initial days aboard the train, amidst desperate conditions, the impoverished passengers resorted to cannibalism, with infants being considered the most palatable. In a harrowing moment, Curtis was on the brink of killing a mother and her baby, Edgar, but Gilliam intervened, offering his own arm as sustenance instead. Witnessing Gilliam's sacrifice, others followed suit, resorting to self-mutilation for survival. However, Curtis bears a scar on his arm as a testament to his inability to carry out such an act. As time passed, the guards began distributing protein blocks, providing a meager alternative to cannibalism. In a moment of revelation, Nam admits to hoarding cranol, recognizing its flammable properties. He reveals his plan to utilize the cranol as a bomb to breach the door leading to the outside world. Over the course of the past decade, Nam has observed signs of thawing ice during each new year, fostering hope that escape and survival beyond the train's confines may be possible. Abruptly, the door swings open, revealing Claude, who promptly shoots Nam and seizes his chrono bomb. Claude then delivers a message from Wilfred, inviting Curtis to dinner. Intrigued, Curtis enters and finally comes face to face with Wilfred, who remarks on Curtis' unique achievement of traversing the entire length of the train, a feat never before accomplished due to Wilfred's absence from the rear compartments. Wilfred proceeds to expound upon the significance of ecological balance, revealing that he and Gilliam have collaborated to orchestrate fake revolutions, systematically reducing the population. Curtis, who should have perished earlier in the journey, inadvertently disrupted their plans. To rectify the imbalance, Wilfred orders the egg supplier to eliminate all remaining poor passengers in the rear cars, sparing only 18 individuals to mark the train's 18th year in operation. The piercing cries and gunfire emanating through the phone jolt Curtis into a grim realization. The logo next to Gilliam was actually his own private phone. Meanwhile, Franco awakens in the sauna and promptly retrieves the knife. Outside Wilfred's car, Yona and Nam regain consciousness, only to find themselves under attack by an assailant from the party. Reacting swiftly, Nam intervenes, incapacitating the attacker and shoving him into the train's mechanism, effectively neutralizing the threat. However, more enraged partygoers approach, prompting Nam to block the bridge as Yona is instructed to open the door to their refuge. Inside the engine room, Wilfred grants Curtis a rare moment of solitude, a respite he has long yearned for since boarding the train. Overwhelmed by the weight of his experiences, Curtis collapses to his knees, succumbing to tears. In a poignant gesture, Wilfred presents Curtis with the last capsule, bearing a message that simply reads "Train." Wilfred expresses his desire for Curtis to assume leadership of the train, emphasizing that it was Gilliam's wish as well. Meanwhile, outside the car, Franco navigates through the throngs of partygoers. Simultaneously, Yona succeeds in opening the door, prompting Claude to investigate. However, Yona swiftly dispatches Claude and seizes her gun, engaging in a tense shootout with Franco until she exhausts her ammunition. Despite sustaining injuries, Franco remains alive. Nam directs Yona to retrieve the chrono from Claude and matches from Curtis. However, when Yona approaches Curtis for the matches, he is ensnared in Wilfred's manipulation and pushes her away. Determined, Yona resorts to using a fork to pry open a floor tile, revealing Timmy working on powering the engine. Wilfred discloses that due to a shortage of parts over the years, children now serve as replacements. Enraged by this revelation, Curtis assaults Wilfred, then reaches into the machinery to halt the engine's operation, enduring excruciating pain. He passes the matches to Yona before she rushes out. Meanwhile, Andy emerges from a compartment and heads to the engine to restart it. In a swift and coordinated effort, Nam eliminates Franco. Yona ignites the chrono, and Curtis, despite his injury, manages to halt the engine once more, allowing Timmy to escape. The group rushes to embrace each other as the chrono detonates, shattering the door and triggering a massive avalanche that cascades down upon the train. Car after car plunges off the tracks until the locomotive grinds to a halt, wedged into the snow. Moments later, Timmy and Yona regain consciousness amidst flames in the lifeless forms of their fellow passengers. Donning the stolen furs, they venture outside and are greeted by the sight of a polar bear. In that moment, they realize that they are no longer condemned to perish from the merciless cold, and now with a newfound sense of hope, they embrace the uncertain future that lies beyond the confines of the train. And with that gripping conclusion, we've reached the end of today's journey through the chilling tale of survival aboard the Snowpiercer. If you enjoyed this narrative, don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories. Leave a like if you found it engaging, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, may your adventures be as thrilling as the ones aboard the Snowpiercer.